Hi, Miriam.
How are you doing?
Very well, thanks.
Very good.
I was just thinking, Kevin, when I heard you speaking about that, the travellers, I was horrified. I couldn't believe the 3%. But I remember years ago hearing a community worker talking about at a stage she was working in Scotland, and she discovered that the mortality rate was significantly lower than average. And when she said it to a group, being appalled, somebody said, "For who'd want 10 more years of this?"
Waffling away there happily, Una, in response to you. Sorry about that. But I was just saying that the language of deaths of despair, I don't know whether that's a phrase that people are familiar with. So it's one of the ways that people are starting to think about mortality in the developed nations, especially around addiction. So people are dying not so much because they have cancer or because they're old. They're dying because they despair of life. And their lifestyles are attempts to cope with the difficulties of grinding inequality and exclusion and prejudice. And we don't have language to describe just how difficult it is to live on the edge of society. And I suspect that the reason why we don't have language to describe that is because it's people like me who are mostly doing the talking. So we need to be paying attention more to the people who are on those estates in Scotland, so that and who are in the temporary halting sites on the edges of our towns and who are in direct provision centres. We need to make space at the centre of our conversation for the people who are on the margins, so that we can hear those kinds of shocking statements and properly process them. Does that make sense, Una?
Absolutely, but should they have to bear their? I mean, how would they feel about making themselves even more vulnerable than they are to people like us? That we should know. We shouldn't have to be told how awful it is. Only try to.
Absolutely. I mean, you're entirely right, and that's why I'm saying friendship can't be forgotten in this. Real relationship needs to be the point where we as individuals begin. So that it's not a case of we don't need representative kind of token figures from the marginalized classes to come and become prominent spokespeople, so much as we ourselves who are in the center of society need to have the relationships that give us the proper perception, as opposed to, as you say, like forcing the people who are marginalized and under pressure to do more work. That would be further injustice.
Yeah, I like the idea of social friendship.
Thanks, Una. We're just coming up to the 12 mark, and I think most people will have had a chance at least to bring the cup of tea maybe to the computer, so you can sip away as we listen in. We're very grateful to say that for all who've attended. We have 100 people online. We had hoped to break up into groups, but the technology just won't agree with us this morning. So it's probably just as well, because in this way we won't be excluding anybody. And seeing as this morning is all about inclusion, perhaps the best way to do it is to throw it open to the floor straight away. So what we had hoped to do is ask people to think on some of the questions that Kevin had set after he had spoken. And then maybe to invite some of the groups to feedback. But maybe what I'll do is just once more might remind you of what Kevin has been asking us to do. He was asking us to look at the story of Sharp and Strong, as he had told us, and to help us imagine a response to racism, inequality and exclusion, how we might imagine a response, or to describe then what societal factors might be at play to encourage us to depict racism as a personal failing. And if racism and exclusion and inequality always go together, what political, legal and structural changes do we have to fight for or to fight these problems? And lastly, what might this idea of social friendship, or how might this idea of social friendship play out in your context? So rather than going into the groups, which seems an impossibility given the technology difficulties this morning, if there is anybody who might feel, as having listened to some of what Kevin has brought to us this morning, that maybe they would like to comment maybe on some aspect of what they've heard, or to comment maybe on some of the questions that Kevin put towards the end. I will invite for a few minutes now. We probably won't be able to get through a whole lot of people, but it would be interesting to hear if people had any comment on some of the things that Kevin had brought to our attention this morning. Pia, you're unmuted there. If you would like to go first, you have your hand up. Thank you, Pia.
I am struck by your words. Sorry, I just have to, about travellers. And there are a lot of things I feel angry about because of their condition. There's not enough, as you say, to say words about it. The question for me is, what can I as an individual do? I'm very much retired now, well on in years, so I'm not sure what I can do, but I always feel guilty that I do nothing. I talk about it, but I do nothing about it. There's one lady, a traveller I have met several times, who badly, very badly needs a hip replacement, but she's constantly promised, and then the promise broken that she'll get it done soon, and she hasn't yet. She's years waiting. I don't know. Should I do something about it? Can I do something about it? What should I do about it?
Thanks, Pia. I might take one or two other comments and then come back to you maybe at the end, Kevin. That's okay.
Yeah.
Thank you indeed, Pia. Is there anybody else who might like to ask a question or to share a comment on what? Lily, you unmute yourself there, please, and you can come in. Thank you.
And what strikes me, I love the whole idea of the paying attention, and the whole need for political and legal change, structural change. And it begins with us paying attention to what do I actually see in my neighborhood or in my town or my village. And maybe the weakness we have is maybe we don't lobby political figures enough. Maybe that's a weakness with us, that we're a bit shy about emailing our TDs and all of that about things that we actually see and observe. But it does require us to pay attention. That struck me very much.
Thank you indeed, Lily. Is there anybody else who would like to make a comment or to is anybody else? I'm going through the screens now trying to spot a hand up. Anne-Marie, if you unmute yourself, you can come in. Thank you.
Just responding to Kevin, and thank you, Kevin, for a most real and challenging presentation. Just referring back to the refugees in Syria, where we have taken in 83, but also this week it was announced that we had also pledged to take in a number of young unaccompanied minors, and but the bureaucracy, a lot of the clearance is there, but now the difficulty was in the I think it was in the guards, that because of COVID, So these kind of concrete situations, especially with younger minors, I was thinking the last few days, how do I respond to that? Because it's the bureaucracy of that's preventing, and these children are in dire circumstances. When it takes so long to a country, states that will accept them, but then it takes forever for the young people to be admitted in this situation. How do you respond to that, Kevin?
Thanks indeed, Anne-Marie. Is there one more maybe, and then after that I might go back to Kevin, if that's okay. Ronan, did you have a question there? Go ahead, Ronan. Thank you. You need to unmute, Ronan. Thanks. Sorry. Ronan, that's it. Now go ahead.
Can you hear me? Yeah, I was just wondering, where there's a difference of beliefs, does that contribute to possible racist perceptions?
Thanks, Ronan. Thank you very much indeed for that. And so you can see, Kevin, there you have a number of different aspects you have. Sister Pia spoke of anger and guilt and wondering what it is she can do. Sister Lily spoke of paying attention and how that resonated with her. And Marie is looking at the difficulties with the unaccompanied minors and how we respond to that. And then Ronan at the very end asked really about the difference of beliefs and whether that is a contributory factor to some of the difficulties that we face at the minute. So maybe I might ask you, Ronan, or Kevin, if you might come in and just give us a few thoughts on what you've heard from the few people that spoke. Thanks.
Thanks, Brian, and thank you to everyone for your very warm reception of my ideas. I think the first and the second question come together. What can we do about it, and whether or not we're shy about lobbying? And I think one of the things we can do about it is on the political level. We can use our centrality as citizens who have votes, who have social capital, and we can express ourselves to politicians more commonly and more articulately. And I would say that the way to do that is at the local level. So it's good to send emails and letters to the TDs, but it's, you know, if you think particularly about the Pia's question about travellers, it's the county council who isn't able to enact any kind of justice for our traveling community because of a perceived political punishment that will come their way. So if you articulate clearly to your county councillors that actually you want to see them provide the services that are the due of people who live in our society, then that empowers them to make the decisions that they want. In the large part, the politicians, even the ones we most viciously disagree with, are trying to do the best they can. So we can help them by being active citizens. That's one level. I mean, there's lots of other ways as well. Then on the question of bureaucracy, I'm reminded of an old joke that I heard when I worked in the Department of Foreign Affairs about the death of a civil servant. And they put a tombstone up and they said on the tombstone, "Here lies the civil servant, civil to no one, servant only to the devil." And, you know, the civil servant can be easily demonized. But again, what we have to recognize is that they're caught in a system that they're trying to work in a humane way. And it's very often a very difficult job. So I think that one thing that we can do is, again, in our engagement with bureaucrats, to show them the respect and the dignity that might lead to friendship. I know, especially in the asylum seeking process, that the catastrophic holdups that we have for people in direct provision is largely down to like really boring logistical problems with recruiting sufficiently qualified people to do that job. So the people who are doing that job have a burden that they can't cope with in terms of work, and then corners get cut and shortcuts are taken. So I think, again, that's back to the political again. We need to fund those systems appropriately so that the people who are doing those jobs have the time to pay attention. And then finally, on the question of the difference of beliefs, Ronan's put his finger on it, I think. And I'll say here, speaking as a Christian, as a theologian, this is one of the places where Christians in our society should be making an active difference. Because of course, Christianity involves a set of dogmatic beliefs that we subscribe to. We say them in the creed. There are certain things that you believe if you are a Christian. And those beliefs are different from the beliefs of secular humanists or Buddhists or atheists. But Christianity has theological resources for engaging with difference of belief in respect. We're able to stand side by side with a neighbor who passionately disagrees with us and give them the space to authentically believe what they believe. So while we are most fully holding to the dogmatic truth of our faith when we make a hospitable space for people who are different from us. This is the parable of the Good Samaritan applied intellectually, you know, to expect that the person who is radically different in belief might also be the person who God has put in our path to reveal good news. So I think that perceived difference of belief is a massive. When I talk about Islam, I think that contemporary Irish society has a real problem with some of the beliefs of Islam. Whether those problems are grounded in reality, probably not. But Christians ought to be the people in society who are most hospitable to those who disagree with us. And that can be a witness then to everyone else. We have much more intellectual resources than secular liberalism, for example, which can only tolerate difference. And to tolerate difference means to not love. You know, you don't love that which you tolerate. When I make dinner for my 2-year-old son and it's got peas on it, he might tolerate the peas and eat some green vegetables, but he doesn't love them. And Christianity has resources by which we can truly and authentically love the person, even though they're radically different from us. And so if it is the point of difference, then that shouldn't be any barrier to us as Christians. And I recognize there might be some people here who don't identify in that way, but allow me to speak from my position. I, as a Christian, see that as really central to my mission, to be hospitable to those who are different. Does that make sense, Ronan?
Yes, yes.
And sorry for waffling here.
Not at all, Kevin. You hit the nail on the head, as you have done all morning, and thank you very much for that. I think your lasting message that I picked up from us is that as Christians, we have to make and can make an active difference. And thank you, Kevin, for all your input this morning, for fielding the questions, for the preparation and the PowerPoint and everything that you said. And thankfully, we have recorded it, so we'll be able to watch back again and to share it with those who can't be here with us this morning. So we're going